musician fails, or crazy rock star injuries. Who got hurt? How did it happen? And what does that mean for the concert at hand? Stay tuned to find out. Hey everybody, Dr. Chris, orthopedic surgeon and sports medicine physician. Welcome to my channel, your #1 stop for information on broken bones and orthopedic injuries that's easy to understand for the everyday human.
That's a little doctor joke we like to make around here.
If you want to know more about me and my life as an orthopedic surgeon, be sure to follow me on Instagram or Twitter at Stable Knees. I'll put it down below. So yes, you heard me correctly. Today we are talking about rock stars. And in particular, we are talking about rock stars or musicians who have been injured while they are performing. So the first injury comes from a group known as Slipknot. And in this video, it's their DJ, Sid Wilson, who is injured. And this comes from a performance from 2008. So on this particular occasion, Sid was injured while they were performing a song known as Disaster Piece. And during this performance, Sid jumped down from the stage a distance of approximately 15 feet and he landed on both of his heels. Unfortunately for Sid, he injured both heels by the impact with the ground, but despite his injuries, he continued performing, although he was not really able to stand, and he completed the set. But as they say, the show must go on. So as a result of this incident, Sid suffered bilateral, meaning on both sides, calcaneus fractures. Both heel bones were broken. Generally speaking, one calcaneus fracture is painful and a problem. Having bilateral or two, one on both sides, is even worse. If the fracture fragments are undisplaced, meaning that they haven't moved, or if there are no articular gaps, meaning that there are no gaps at the surfaces of the bones that move with respect to one another, then these fractures can be treated non-operatively with cast mobilization for a period of approximately 8 to 12 weeks. If, on the other hand, the fractures are displaced, then they will likely require open reduction and internal fixation with plate and screws. And this just means that we're going to make an incision, move the fracture fragments back to their anatomic position, and then hold them in place with plate and screw fixation. In extreme cases where the fracture fragments are crushed or extensively comminuted, meaning in many pieces that really can't go back together anatomically, then these fractures may need to be treated with primary fusion, meaning that we don't try to fix it, we just fuse them together with the bones around to make a solid one-piece unit so that the person or the patient will not have pain in the future. Now obviously, this means that the ankle joint, or the subtalar joint, or the midfoot joint, or whichever of these joints is involved, are no longer going to move as a result of the fusion. However, this may be the most straightforward option in very complex fracture cases. So the next artist that we're going to talk about is Steven Tyler from Aerosmith. And this injury came from a 2009 performance. While performing the song Love in an Elevator at the Sturgis Bike Festival, Steven Tyler was dancing on the stage. Unfortunately, he was dancing near the edge of the stage and he fell off the stage into the crowd from a height of approximately 6 feet. As a result of the fall, he injured his head, neck, and shoulder. With assistance, he was brought back onto the stage and he immediately left the stage and was unable to continue the concert. He was subsequently airlifted to the Rapid City Regional Hospital where he underwent examination. Fortunately for Steven Tyler, his injuries were relatively minor and he did not require surgical treatment. However, his injuries required a significant period of rehabilitation and he remained symptomatic for an extended period of time. Later that year, Steven Tyler was admitted to an addiction facility as a result of developing a dependence on pain medication after this injury. And for more information on opiate addiction, be sure to check out my video on that topic. I'll leave a link in the description down below. The third artist that we're going to talk about is musician Dave Grohl from the band Foo Fighters. And this injury stems from a concert in Sweden in 2015. While performing with the band, Grohl unfortunately fell off the stage, dropping from a height of approximately 10 feet. he landed on the ground at an awkward angle and ended up twisting his right ankle. He suffered an injury to his right ankle with an obvious deformity, like meaning his foot was kind of on sideways. Unfortunately for Grohl, he suffered a fracture dislocation of his right ankle. But as I've said before, in entertainment, the show must go on. Initially, he was taken backstage where, would you believe it, a closed reduction was performed without analgesics or sedation, meaning they did not give him any pain medication or any sedatives. He was given a roll of gauze on which to bite while they reduced his ankle, putting it back into place. As if that wasn't enough, he then went back out on stage to continue the performance. He finished the entire set with a paramedic out on stage holding his ankle in position while he performed. Like, that's hardcore. After the performance, he was taken to the hospital where he underwent emergency surgery. He had an open reduction and internal fixation of his right ankle fracture dislocation, meaning they made an incision and they fixed the fracture with a plate and screws. He also suffered an injury to his syndesmosis in this fall, and this was also treated with a tightrope implant. And this just means that the space between the tibia and the fibula at the level of the ankle was widened, and he needed to have an implant placed in his ankle to close that joint or that space back together. As a result of the injury and the subsequent surgery, he was forced to cancel 5 shows on the tour in order to allow himself time to recuperate. However, he was able to return to the tour after those 5 shows, where he continued to perform while wearing a cast on his right ankle. In 2018, while performing at a concert at the same venue, he actually hired a stuntman to fall off the stage so that he could prank the crowd into believing that he had re-injured himself in the same way that he had several years prior. So the next artist that we're going to talk about is Marilyn Manson. And this injury stems from a concert at the Hammerstein Ballroom in New York City in 2017. And in this particular incident, while performing, Manson grabbed at a scaffold that was holding together 2 gigantic prop handguns on stage. Unfortunately, the scaffold and the handguns had not been secured properly, and when he grabbed at the scaffold, the whole prop fell down forward onto Marilyn Manson, crushing his right leg. Unfortunately for Manson, in this particular case, he was unable to continue the show. Manson suffered a comminuted fibula fracture as a result of this injury. He had an open reduction and internal fixation of his fibula with syndesmotic fixation performed. As a result of his injury and the surgery, he canceled shows between October and December of 2017, and he returned to touring in January 2018. And finally, the last artist that we're going to talk about in this video is James Hetfield of the band Metallica. This injury stems from an incident that occurred in 1992. Prior to this performance, the band had a briefing with the pyrotechnics technicians to determine where on the stage they were supposed to stand with respect to the pyrotechnics that were going to be ignited during the performance. Unfortunately for Hetfield, he became disoriented during the performance and was unsure of where he was standing before the pyrotechnic display was ignited. He accidentally stepped into an area which was directly where the pyrotechnics were to be set off. The pyrotechnic technician did not recognize that Hetfield was out of position, and unfortunately, he lit the pyrotechnics display when Hetfield was standing directly over one of the pyrotechnics. Unfortunately, Hetfield was burnt by the pyrotechnic display on his face, arm, back, and leg.
So I'm burnt, all my arm, my hand completely down to the bone, the side of my face, hair gone.
And just so you understand the significance of this, Hetfield was burnt by a 12-foot flame with a temperature of 3,200 degrees. That's pretty freaking hot. That's hot enough to melt your skin, actually. Like melt it, like wax, or like butter. It's hot enough to melt your skin. There are 2 factors that lessen the severity of the injuries that Hetfield suffered. Number 1, he was using his double neck guitar, which fortunately deflected much of the blast away from his body. And number 2, He did not inhale when the pyrotechnics display was ignited, because that would have cooked his lungs and it would have been game over for Hetfield. Although he was burned and still on fire, he was able to roll across the floor to help douse the flames. The bass technician, Zach Harmon, recalls that Hetfield's skin was actually peeling and melting off during this incident. Hetfield obviously could not continue with the performance and he was rushed to the hospital by ambulance. He suffered second-degree burns on the back of his left hand and second and third-degree burns on both of his arms. Obviously, the Metallica performance was cut short. The following performance by Guns N' Roses started late and also finished early for some unknown reason. This subsequently started a riot by the crowd which spilled out onto the Montreal street and ended up causing over $400,000 of damage and injuries to 10 people. Fortunately for Hetfield, he was able to be treated with only burn dressings and then subsequently with rehabilitation. And like a true performer, he was able to return to the stage after only 18 days to continue with the tour. So there you have it. Today I've been talking about musician fails or the craziest rock star injuries. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And look out for membership options come to this channel really soon. And as always, that's been a word from Dr. Chris, not your everyday ortho.
Just a flesh wound.